What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Motorfest. Today is indeed Wednesday, which means the last summit until November is now indeed live. Of course, going to bring us an entire new, like I guess you could say, event month, and or like an entire new main stage for that matter. But for this one, guys, we obviously have the Japanese original Rice Paddy, which is indeed going to have the crazy looking Honda S2000. Also going to be the second vehicle in this entire game coming in a summit, so it's obviously going to be a pretty special one, and I would say a lot of people are most likely going to want this car. Now do keep in mind, guys, we obviously have the S2000 in platinum, we then have the green wings in gold, 50,000 bucks, and then 50,000 XP toward the main stage. Now, moving over to the summit, guys, it is going to be pretty similar to last week, but luckily there's no drift events in this one. It is primarily going to be based on Street Tier 2, and also a random Tier 1 race here on the top, but we also have two speed traps and or a slalom, so I would say it is going to be a pretty fun summit for the most part. Also, the funny thing, guys, you also have to do two bike events. I do know a lot of players might not be like the biggest fan of the bikes, but the big thing is at least the Honda CBR 1000 is going to be pretty decent. You also get to use the Honda Civic Type R and or the Honda NSX, which by the way I will be doing videos on all of the new cars in this game, so definitely stay tuned. I have been driving more of them recently, so I have to admit a lot of them really are going to be insanely fun to use. But starting off here, guys, we obviously have two different speed traps. For the first one, I actually decided to run the Corvette Stingray C7, which funnily enough I did not say that in the correct order, but I have to admit, guys, my dragsters at the moment have no gold parts, fully purple and or blue, so I obviously have to go in and or use these vehicles a bit more, which I have not because I have been leveling up and or going after different part sets for different classes. But I will be jumping into the dragster here soon. But as y'all know, the Stingray C7 is going to be a great option, and if you guys are not running a crazy nitrochemist set, I would probably say are not going to be insanely quick, at least right now. And then moving over to the other speed trap, guys, I was actually going to use the C7 Stingray again, but I was like, you know what, no, let's mix this up and actually use a different drag car. I decided to jump into the very odd Dodge Viper SRT10, which I have to admit is going to be a pretty decent car overall. Which I have to admit, guys, for me is probably going to be a bit of a shock because I really never use the Viper back on the Crew 2, so jumping into this car now here on Motorfest, I have to admit it's going to be a pretty decent car overall, and I would say with the right part set and or overall pro settings, it actually might be an insanely good vehicle. And then for the last skill, guys, is indeed going to be another slalom similar to last week, which we obviously did see 3 of these for that matter, but for this, guys, you can obviously run any vehicle choice you would like to, as long as you guys have a score breaker set. Also, guys, do not forget about the legend points, which gives you a small boost. And now moving over to the events in the summit here, guys, the two top events here, you obviously have to use the Honda CBR, which I would say is going to be a pretty decent bike overall, at least for a Street Tier 2. Is it going to be like the best bike in the game? I probably would say no, but it's also not going to be the worst. Do keep in mind, guys, for this event, a Nitrochemist set is indeed helpful. And one thing I did notice, by the way, guys, if you are having issues driving the Honda CBR, which I would say depending on your settings probably feels like a refrigerator, I did notice, guys, having the bender perk on some of those parts does make it turn a bit better, which of course in return makes you faster around corners. And then moving over to the next event, guys, you get to use the Honda Civic Type R, which I have to admit is going to be an insanely fun car to use. Do keep in mind, though, it's obviously going to be Street Tier 1, so the top speed of this vehicle is not going to be insanely quick like a Tier 2, but I have to admit, guys, having a new model of the Honda Civic Type R really is going to be absolutely insane, so definitely stay tuned for this car soon. But for this race, though, guys, I would say the biggest thing is getting past the AI, keeping that speed up around the corners, and also, guys, having the best racing line to be as fast as possible. And now for the next 3 events, guys, you also have to use the Honda NSX on basically all 3 of them, which do not worry because this car is honestly going to be a decent option, and it does seem to be a pretty dang fun car overall, so I wouldn't say the NSX is going to be a bad car. Now, do keep in mind, I did notice also the scoring on these events don't seem to be insanely crazy, so I wouldn't get discouraged or stuff like that, guys, if you do see some insanely high scores, because basically everybody does seem to be very similar on these, at least with the scoring, so I would say that's going to be a good way to balance these out. But it can also be kind of frustrating if you are going for higher scores for that matter. Now for this, guys, the Honda NSX is obviously a 5-speed, so it isn't going to be like the fastest car in the game for that matter with the way it does shift. It's also not going to be the slowest either in any of these events, so I would probably say overall the car is going to be pretty well balanced. And of course, having a Nitro Chemist set, guys, on all three of these events is probably going to be insanely helpful. That way you can keep the speed up. Also, coming out of the corners, you can use your nitrous to at least shift up. And obviously having a higher top speed and or holding that overall speed is going to be that much easier with a Nitro Chemist set. Now, I have to admit, guys, I was actually thinking about going back into these three events and or going after a higher score, but after seeing the way these events are being scored, I most likely will not do that, and I really do not see a point of actually going after like another 5 and or 6,000 points, but at least if you guys do want a decent score overall, I did notice the three bottom events here with the NSX seem to be insanely balanced, if that's what you want to call it. Overall, though, guys, I did have a great time with this summit. If you have any questions at all, let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more insight.